Someone just let me know. Have I been knocked off air?
No, you're on, and you're fine.
Oh, I'm still on. Oh, sorry, mate. That's my fault. Right. Okay, so yeah, here we go. Someone's having one of the lads on Darkcity Radio is having a host for me today because we couldn't get the get over the tech issues, and this wouldn't be the No State project without tech issues, as some of you may already know. So there you go. Anyway, well, where was I? Right. I was talking about Mark's system. He's got his own website, markstevens.net. Check that out as well. And basically, what we are all about, in one sense, is that we're all about voluntarism. We're not about. We're certainly not minarchists. We're certainly not pro-government, which is the stance that many freemen take. In that sense, they like to believe that we still need a government and that it just needs to be put in its place and do its job properly, sort of thing. But our point of view on this is that government is the very problem itself, and it needs to go. So, in that sense, we're abolitionists. We want to see government, eventually disappear. We rid ourselves of it. We never have it again, and we find a way of being able to live civilized and operate our community without having to have this parasite called government, or the people call themselves government, interfering with our autonomy. It doesn't mean that it's going to be chaos, and people like to mix that word up with anarchy and say, oh, if you had anarchy there'd be nothing but chaos. It's complete bull. And there's no point in history where anybody could ever prove that to be the case. So anyway, what Mark did, he got into this many years back, and back in 2002 he actually wrote a book called Adventures in Legal Land. I read this book a few years back myself, and I was totally sucked in by it, because what he taught was a lot of sense, and it was common sense at the end of the day. It spelled out a lot of the things that I knew was wrong about the system and the methods that I was using at the time myself. I got caught up into a lot of the free men stuff. This was before Dean Clifford ever came along, and a few of the others, all these so-called trust law experts suddenly hit the scene. But what I found is that a lot of these methodologies just weren't working, weren't having any effect. And it's because deep down I knew that the system was so bent, it makes absolutely no difference what you do. But Mark showed me, and many other people, part of the NSP group, showed me a new way of dealing with this, and it proved more effective. It still doesn't mean you're going to get parking tickets and cases dropped against you, but it gives you a better chance, and usually, if you're prepared to go all the way in terms of taking these things to appeal, you can usually eventually get these things dropped, because it's very easy to show that they've abused the alleged process they're meant to follow, and they can't. Their claim just can't hold up against the scrutiny, and once you actually base it against the facts. So what happened was, I got into this, let's say, a few years back myself, and I started studying the difference, or started studying the UK system based on Marx. And what we found is that they are exactly the same, because as many of you may already know, the court system we have in this country was transferred over, or the old common law system moved over to America, or was taken over to America as a franchise, if you like. And so their system is built from ours. So anything that generally goes on over there can be interpreted or reinterpreted to fit over here. And Mark's got another website as well. There's a wiki group called Adventures in Legal Land Wiki, or I believe it might be Mark Stevens Adventures in Legal Land. And it's a wiki group, and we're shortly going to be posting up new information on there regarding case law and other bits and pieces that are going to be helpful that people can use in cases against them. So that's another one to check out. And I'm still in the process of getting that, getting the information I was meaning to put up there done. So, but that should be sorted out within the next week or so. And so, like I say, what this all comes under is Mark's book. A lot of people ask, is it applicable in the UK? Well, absolutely it is. Everything that he claims and puts forward in his book, all of this can still apply in this country as well. And in fact, it can apply in just about every country around the world. And the thing is, with our system, in the American system, is that we have what's called an adversarial system, which is why you always see when you're being dragged up in court, they'll make the claim that it's you versus somebody else. And what that means is that the person who's actually bringing the claim against you bears the burden of proof, not you. That's very important. And believe it or not, you actually have, according to their opinion, their Supreme, the opinions of the Supreme Court and the House of Law, you actually have a right to an adversarial proceeding. And the reason is because if it's adversarial, they have to bring the facts forward and the claim, and you defend against it, and you're allowed to pick apart any part of that you like. And what it means is that the burden of proof lies with them and them alone, and not with the judges, as you get in inquisitorial systems, which take place in certain parts of Europe as well. But regardless of whether it's inquisitorial, whether it's adversarial, the facts still remain the same. They don't change regardless. It doesn't matter who's bearing that burden of proof. The facts will never change. And those facts come under things like the applicability of the law, whether they have a valid cause of action against you or a valid charge, as they call it, which is a specific cause of action, and and various other issues that come into this, various other elements. And the reason why it has to be an adversarial system as well in this country is because you have to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. And like saying, that burden lies with the prosecution or the claimant, be it civil or criminal. And so there's many elements that come into that, and they actually hinder the way that this system is meant to work. If they was actually to run their system properly, they could probably never bring a claim against anybody, no matter what they ever did. And this is the thing that we point out, is the fact that this system is fundamentally flawed, and I'll point that out, and I'll show that to you. And the fact is that because it is flawed, it means that there's no point making the argument regarding statutes or anything like that when you're dealing with these people. Whatever we use against them using line of questioning, we use it against them to get them to contradict themselves. We never accuse them of anything. They admit it themselves. That's generally the methodology, if you like, the way we go about using this line of questioning. So, like I say, he wrote a book called Adventures in Legal Land. It was back in 2002. He's got a new book coming out soon, and that's called Government Indicted. And we've been waiting a long time for this book, and I hope Mark gets on with it and gets it released soon. And it's going to be it's hopefully going to be a very good book as well, so just as good, maybe even better than the first, which would be hard to do, I believe. But the way he's written it is, he's hoping he's written it in a way where it can help people help themselves. So you don't need to keep going back and asking people for help or information all the time. It's something where you can read this book and you will have the confidence and the knowledge to be able to take this into court an hour later if need be, and you'll be able to hold your ground. But it still takes practice. Court isn't for everybody. This is how we try to help people. We try to help people get prepared for this sort of thing, even if they're not always the best. The best at dealing with public speaking or anything like that. But anyway, I mean, it all comes down to this quote: "Those who attack the rationale of the game are not the players or its most formidable adversaries." That's exactly what we're doing. We're attacking the rationale of the game, not necessarily the people we're dealing with. It's what they hold to be true. It's their opinions we're going to use back against them. Because an opinion can be valid when it's backed up by facts. If it's a baseless opinion, we tear the arse out of them in order to expose what they're doing. To expose the lie, if you like. And I'll say that's it. So, I mean, if you're not familiar with Mark Stevens, I mean, he's not a guru. He's not one of these types that's been coming out of the woodwork over the last few years and putting himself across as a guru, if you like. And he's certainly not that. He's certainly not a leader of any movement or anything like that. He's just a normal bloke, much like me and everyone else is probably listening to this. And he just woke up to this stuff a few years ago. Like many of us, he got burnt, he got screwed over by the system, and it got him curious, and he started looking into this. But he's got a great way of thinking and understanding this stuff. He's got such a clear way of doing it, and he's very good at explaining this stuff in a very good way, in a very articulate, very very well placed way to help you understand. I've got a little talk that I gave a few years ago at the Kent Freedom Movement. If you check their website out, that's a group that I'm actually involved with as well. They're based in, they run regular talks down in Gravesend in Kent, and it's called the Kent Freedom Movement. I believe it's .co.org, or it might be .co.uk. Forgive me if I've got that wrong, but just type in the Kent Freedom Movement, and it'll easily come up if you Google it. And I gave a talk there a few years ago. So if you wanted to look up a video, that it's in a two-part. It's in a two-part set of videos, and I go into this stuff a little bit more deeper then. And the first part I'll talk about basically the system and show you how it's obviously flawed. It's got no validity to it. It's got no legitimacy to it at all. The government as such, and then the second half we go into dealing, actual issues of dealing with bureaucrats. How we actually go about questioning and challenging this stuff effectively. And so that's something you can look into. And like I say, if anybody still wants to call into the show, you can do it. But as time goes on, that we get more callers in, and we get people lined up before we actually start the show. But obviously today is our first out in doing this, so it's all a bit last minute, and we had a few tech problems to overcome as well. So right, so the philosophy of this is the fact that we don't look at winning in court. There is no such thing as winning against these people. Whenever you're stuck having to deal with bureaucrats, you're already going to lose something. You're already going to lose your time, energy, and money in most cases. Certainly your time and energy. Even just reading one of their letters takes however long it does out of your life. So the way we look at this is there is no winning from the point of view of you're going to get one over on them as such. The moment these people start attacking you, they're taking something from you. They're taking your precious time and energy from you when you could have that time to get on with your own life and be with your own families and as such. And so, like I say, we don't look at solutions or remedies. That isn't what we talk about. And we don't offer solutions or remedies. We just look at effective damage control. That's what we call it, because that's all you can really do. You can just limit the damage, limit the amount of time, energy, and money these buggers are going to take from you. And we try and do that as best we can and as quickly as we can. Even sometimes, if that means ultimately getting a fine reduced, even if you might end up having to still pay the buggers, it's a matter of getting the fine reduced or getting it down to a payment method where you can, something you can afford, so you're not going to starve, sort of thing. But this is a way we sometimes have to deal with these things. Usually we can get a majority of cases dropped, but the problem is it's all about self-defense. This is all about trying to protect yourself from these people, and we just try and find ways to do that. And that's what we're looking for. We're not looking for solutions or remedies because we don't believe they're out there. You got to remember, this is their system. They created it. They don't even play by their own rules. So how the hell can you have a remedy within a system that's fundamentally flawed, where they can't even stick to their own rules and regulations? It's nonsense to believe that. And all this stuff about admiralty law, and it's all it's all the law of the sea and this, that, and the other. That's all just legal opinion. We're not interested in that. We couldn't care less about the labels that gets put on this system, and the way you deal with these people. You don't go writing lengthy notices and get caught up in, thousands of hours of paperwork like many people do with some of this stuff. I'm not saying we certainly don't get involved in any of the trust law stuff. This whole issue of, the government being in a trust relationship with us, the people, and all this sort of thing. As far as we're concerned with the NSP group, that's complete nonsense. If there was a trust or some sort of trust agreement going on there, well then there'd be facts proving that there's a proper paper trail, and we could trace back and see whether there is actually some sort of or a trust, not some sort of trust. We'd want to see the facts that actually prove it beyond any doubt. And we've never seen it. A lot of this is all just built on assumption and opinion. And the fact that, and even if this was a trust, let's say for example, this was a trust, there's no way on earth it could be valid under this system. Because to have a trust, you have to have clean hands to come to it for a start, and the people who put themselves into power over us, i.e. government, how the hell would they ever come into this process with clean hands? They're all as bent as arseholes. Most of them are psychopaths. It's all the back-scratching, old boys club mob. And, there's absolutely no way that these people come from the people and act for the people. They're certainly not representatives. You can't have a representative and control somebody at the same time, i.e. be government. So this whole idea about this all being some sort of trust doesn't wash. The facts don't stack up. The facts don't back that up. And so... I'll say the way we deal with it is we use their system back against them in terms of actually pointing at the flaws within that system and the fact that they can't even stick to their own rules and regulations. And so, we just stick to a very simple method. It's just the what, why, when, how, where, and who. We just stick to that. Always question. Stick to those three methods of questioning. You usually get to the answer of what you want. So the way this system works is whenever a claim is brought against you, you have if it's civil, you have what's called a cause of action brought against you. If it's criminal, it's called a specific cause of action because it's known as a specific charge, or a charge that gets brought against you for short. And there are elements within that cause of action and charge which must be factually proven before you move on to anything else, before you start bringing any more evidence forward or start making any more accusations. And these elements they're very simple. It is a breach of a legal duty, a violation of a legal right, and damage or harm, damage, harm, but where redressability is available. And so when you go to court, or if you end up getting attacked by these people, i.e. a parking ticket or anything like that, this is what you challenge them on. Did you file a valid cause of action against me? Now, I'll talk you through those elements. The elements are the violation of a legal right is the alleged statute. Because the way a statute allegedly applies to you, which most of these muppets in the legal system don't even understand, is it creates, now I'm going to say creates, but I'll get to the facts of that. It allegedly creates a legal obligation on you, or a legal duty as they call it, either to do or not to do something. So if you get accused of speeding in your car, they're claiming that you had a duty not to do that because this act imposed that obligation or duty on you. And so that's simply how allegedly an act applies to you. It simply creates an obligation on you to do or not to do something. That's it. Now, the next element is breach of legal duty. There you go. That's the act, and the violation of a legal right. Because they're accusing you, whenever they accuse you of a civil or criminal, they're accusing you of a wrong. So whenever they're accusing you of doing something wrong, well, right and wrong are complementary terms, aren't they? Everybody knows that. You can't have one without the other. You can't have a wrong without a right, and you can't have a right without a wrong. And so what that means is that you've had to have violated somebody's rights. And so because you violated somebody's rights, you therefore caused damage or harm in some form. Now, this is the problem with this. How can I prove that factually? Well, if it's a real person you're dealing with, you punch him on the nose and whatnot, you can prove that harm was done. Can't necessarily prove you violated a right, but they can certainly prove that harm and damage was done to somebody. And it's irrelevant whether there was a legal obligation for you not to punch him on the nose or not. But like I say, the way we deal with it is we're dealing with facts. And so with a cause of action, if you look at it under the way their system is meant to operate and you start picking it apart with the facts, you find it falls apart. They can never bring facts forward to prove those elements. All they can do is keep bringing legal opinions, and it's a term that we use called turtles all the way down. It's one opinion resting upon another opinion. Or if, as the old saying goes, it's turtles all the way down. It's one turtle resting upon another turtle upon another turtle. It's how they used to claim the world used to be. The world used to rest on the back of a turtle. Or what was that? What did that turtle rest on? On another turtle. And down it went. It was just a never-ending pile of turtles as such. And this is what we've got. It's a never-ending pile of opinions upon opinions. They can't bring any facts. They just have to keep relying on somebody else's opinion to back up the opinion they already have. And so when you're dealing with civil, civil breaks down into two groups, or into two categories. That's contract or toll. Trust can come into that as well, which gets thrown about by other groups. But a trust is a contract, in that sense, just to keep this simple. So tort and contract are the two categories, or two subject matter categories that can only come under civil law. So if you're going to sue somebody under a civil claim, it has to be one of those two. It has to be. There's nothing else that it can come under according to their system. And what happens is when they bring a claim against you for, say, a parking ticket or something like that, it's, believe it or not, it's a tort. Now, a lot of people in the free man movement and these other movements all claim, no, it's a contract. Well, I've never seen any facts proving that. But when you look up the definitions of a public toll, especially regarding when it relates to traffic, what it claims is basically is that a parking ticket is not parking ticket, sorry, a public toll is something where they're claiming you're inconveniencing or doing some sort of harm to the public in general. Well, whenever you park on a bit of paint on the side of a road, they'll always claim you're holding up the traffic. You know, and it's our job to keep the traffic moving and all this codswallop. That's absolute rubbish. But, you know, but what they claim is that you're causing some sort of, you know, you're interfering with other people using the roads. You're causing a nuisance, if you like. So it comes under the tort public nuisance. And so that's what they're actually accusing you of in that sense. It's essentially a public tort. But when they're talking about a public tort, a public tort is not a tort against an individual. It's against the community at large. It has to be more than one individual, allegedly. But again, this is just all conjecture. It's just opinion still. Do they have any facts to prove you've actually caused any harm to this abstraction called the public? Because that's all it is. Like I say, these alleged offences that they claim we commit only exist in their minds. There's no facts to bring it into the real world and actually prove that any harm or anything they claim actually took place, actually happened. And the other thing is they naturally assume the law is applicable to you. And all we ask is what are the facts that they rely on to prove that the law or the code, in some cases, they refer to it as that, the statutes I'm talking about, actually apply to you. And sometimes they start saying, well, it says so in the statute. I couldn't care less what the statute says. Before you read from it, prove it applies to me first. Then you can read from it all you like. Because that's like saying to somebody, well, the Bible says that everybody's a Christian as far as we're concerned. Try saying that to someone who claims to be not religious at all. You know, what are you going to do? So, well, it says so in this book that you're a Christian. Really, prove that book applies to me. Then read for it. Then you can read from it. That's the same position we're putting in. Just because someone builds a church down the road from you, does that suddenly make everybody within 100 miles radius a Christian? Just because some nutcase who built it decides so? No, of course not. It's their opinion. But this is the nonsense that they get you to believe. So, you know, they build a church and then decide the Bible applies to everybody because we say so, because we built this church. So, like I say, that's their logic. It's called circular reasoning. In that sense, you know, you can't turn around and say the law applies because the law says so. That's ridiculous. And what we've done is we get to the facts of the issue. What factually is the law? Well, it's somebody else's opinion. That's all it is. It's either a legislator or a group of people who call themselves legislators, or it's geezer who's called a judge who wears a funny wig and costume. And he decides it, but it's an opinion. If you need proof that it's an opinion, the law is an opinion, go and look up a House of Lords ruling. Any case you like, doesn't matter what it's about. You can find these, Google them, easy enough. House of Lords case law, House of Lords ruling, and it will actually say it right at the top of that, well, near enough at the top of that page. It will claim that it is the opinions of the Lords, so and such. Because it's because if they've made a ruling and they claim this is now law, which is what we use against them, their opinions, they openly admit it. But people don't put the two and two together and claim, that's law, but it's saying there it's the opinions of these group of men or women who are called judges and wear these funny wigs. So, like I say, if you need proof, if you don't believe me on that one about what law factually is, go and look that up because they openly admit it themselves. Law is an opinion. It is nothing else. It is not God-given. It is, there's no such thing as natural law or anything like that. It's the fact that this all comes from somebody's head. It comes from somebody else's mind, or a group of people who agree on, a certain issue. And that's all it is. And that's all we're really dealing with. So, And with criminal is what's known as it's in the nature of a tort, because a tort is basically causing somebody injury or harm without a contract being involved. That's absent a contract. That's it. So, like I say, if you're going to use this stuff against them and you're unsure whether the claim they're bringing against you is in the nature of a tort or a contract, just ask them. Now, sometimes they'll come back to you and say that, well, it's neither. Well, that's ridiculous. It can't be neither. And if you look on my video on the KFM, I've put some information up from various websites and even a quote from an ex-lord. Would actually admit this, openly admit that civil law falls under tort contract. That's it. And so, like I say, they can't claim it's neither, because if you're going to violate somebody's rights, they've got to be specific and point to, well, how was that right violated? Was it under a contract? Was it under a breach of a contract? Or if you claim it's not a contract, well, then you've got to claim that I've done somebody harm absent a contract. That makes it a tort, period. Because there has to be the violation of a legal right regardless, whether it's civil or criminal. So that's why you always come back to that. And that's it. It's that simple. It's really not very difficult to understand that. So with criminal, like I say, it comes under the nature of a tort, which means they're claiming you've done injury to somebody, and it's absent a contract, but they don't call it a tort, but it's in the nature of a tort. It means exactly the same thing almost. They just don't use the word tort in a sense, in that sense, because tort is considered civil. And the only difference between civil and criminal is in how harshly they're going to treat you. It's just in the way that it's just in that's it. That's the only difference between civil and criminal. It's just in the severity of how they could treat you or how they believe they've got the right to treat you. That's it. So, and then we have this issue regarding something called malum prohibitum and malum in se. Malum prohibitum basically means it's something that's deemed a crime because somebody simply decides so. That's a wrong, and it's something that's prohibited just simply because we say so. Whereas malum in se, M-A-L-U-M-I-N-S-E, in se, simply means that a wrong that is wrong within itself, something that we inherently know is wrong. So taking somebody's life or, stealing, anything like that, we inherently know that to be wrong because we have morals, we have ethics, certain things we have to live by if we're going to be, if we're going to get by as a species as such, we're going to be cooperative and live as a social creature. We know that that's inherently wrong. That's hardwired in our brain. But most things we get accused of when bureaucrats coming after us are statutory claims, which come under this thing called malum prohibitum. And it's nothing more than, it's our opinion that this is wrong because we say so, but they can never actually prove it's inherently wrong in itself, a lot of these things. Speeding isn't inherently wrong in itself. They're just accusing you of driving your car at a given rate of knots, and somehow they now have the right to claim you're a criminal for doing that. But in the real world, under the old Latin phrase of malum in se, it's not inherent. It's not wrong in itself. It's just simply an opinion that it's wrong. In the sense of, they can't actually show it as a victim, but they simply say you've defied us. You've not done as you was told. And that's what a lot of this is about. When you're taking a court under statutory provisions, what they're actually accusing you of is not doing as you're told. And, it's disobedience. That's what you're actually being accused of. But because they have to justify their actions, they have to make this look good. The public relations says, whenever they set the system up, thousands of years ago, they obviously had to make this appear as if they could justify themselves and they were doing this for all the right reasons. So this is why they claim. You can't have a claim against somebody without a violation of a legal right, and that's fair enough, isn't it? In that sense. But the truth is that, you can't really have a claim against somebody unless there's been a real victim. somebody has actually suffered some sort of harm, loss, or injury in some sort of way. And that victim has to be real. It can't be abstract. And that's fair enough. I mean, that's not ridiculous, is it? You know, if you're going to live in the real world as such. But this is the way they've twisted it. They've twisted something from a criminal offence and said that that's a crime against all society. And yet, saying that it's a claim against all society means that apparently by speeding in your car, I'll come to this, I'll explain what speeding really is, but when they claim that you've done that, you've committed an offence, a crime against everybody. People who are in bed, the other side of the country, apparently, you somehow violated their rights. Obviously, it's ridiculous. It's bloody nonsense. You can't violate anybody's rights. And the thing is with rights is they're an abstraction still. They only exist in your head. They're not real. So again, all of this only exists in the minds of these people that are making this accusation against you. There are no facts to back any of this stuff up. And like I say, this is what we attack. So with speeding, I mean, I'll just explain it quickly. I was in court myself a few years back dealing with a speeding case, which is going to appeal shortly. And I actually said it to the judge. They kept on accusing me of speeding. I kept saying, what is it you're accusing me of? And they kept saying, well, speeding. I said, well, that's the accusation. I get that. Now what does speeding make me guilty of? And they came back with speeding. So apparently speeding makes you guilty of speeding. It's like saying to somebody, well, speeding makes you guilty. Oh, we clamour now. Oh, I think someone needs to mute out. I'm getting double feedback here. I apologise, folks. Right, has it gone? Right, I think it's gone now. That's it. So, right. So, yes, I was talking about speeding. Like I say, if they claim that speeding makes you guilty of speeding, that's just going back round into circular logic again. How can you cannot define something by itself? It's like calling a dog because it's a dog. If you was going to say that to an alien and he says to you, what is that creature? And you say, well, it's a dog. And he goes, well, what's a dog? Oh, well, it's a dog. They'll think you're mad. They'll think, like I say, so you cannot define something by itself. If you're going to define something and be specific about it, you have to define it in a way where you don't use the same word to call it. You can't call it something by itself. So if you're going to describe law, if you're going to define law to somebody, you can't then use the word law. You can't turn around and say, well, law is law because it's law. Obviously. So if you're going to describe law, you have to be able to do it or define it without using the word law. And it's the same with a dog. You can't call a dog because it's a dog. If you're going to define a dog, you have to define that animal by not using the word dog. So this is how you learn, and this is how you learn to think and how you learn to explain things and express them properly, be able to articulate them without going round into circular logic, trying to define something by itself. Now, with speeding, speeding is a legal opinion, and what they're accusing you of when you're speeding makes you guilty of violating somebody's rights. See, the way law works is it's all about causation. And what I mean by causation is it's not the act itself that you're guilty of, it's what you caused is what you're guilty of. And the causation is you violated somebody's rights. That is what you caused. You caused the violation of somebody's rights, and therefore that is what you're guilty of, not the act in itself. So this is why you ask, what does speeding make me guilty of? And if they come back with, speeding makes you guilty of speeding, it goes to prove they haven't got a clue what they're talking about. They don't even understand the concept of causation, and they don't even understand the concept of what they're actually accusing you of. It's like I say, that's it. And that's how the law's meant to work. It's what you caused to happen is what you're actually guilty of, not the act, not necessarily the act in itself. The act in itself is just the act, but by committing that act, you had to have caused something. Something had to have let you've got to go from A B. You've got to go from A to B. Did act A cause injury, harm, loss B? It's that bit in the middle that they've got to prove, or is that part in the middle of that that equation is what they're actually trying to accuse you of. The accusation is that you committed the act. Now they have to show what you caused by committing that act, because that is ultimately what you're guilty of. So that's how it works. It's that simple, really. But like I say, a lot of these people never go in depth into this. They get taught this at law school. They just believe what they're told and run with what they're told, and they just repeat themselves. They just repeat whatever they got told, or repeat something out of a book. They don't go into the mechanics behind it. Excuse me, I'm starting to lose my voice a bit. And so this is what we do. We get into the mechanics behind this. We look behind the meaning of those words, and that's why we use that six friends method, if you like, of questioning the how, I, where's, and when's. And so, like I say, it doesn't matter what you're accused of. It's when you get a parking ticket. Well, what are you being accused of with parking ticket? What they're claiming you're guilty of, what you caused, was an injury to the public. You became a public nuisance. But again, do they have facts to back this up? Well, obviously not, because they don't have. That's the accusation, that's the allegation. But again, it's just an opinion. They've got to have facts to back that opinion up, and they never do, because they have to rely on somebody else's opinion, saying, "Well, he said if you do this, it's wrong." Well, who's that? Or the Secretary of State, or the people who wrote that act? Couldn't care less what they say. Give me the facts. Give me the facts and prove it's even applicable to me first. And we pick apart other things as well, such as countries, nations, boroughs, counties, states, that sort of thing. Because when you look into what in this country, the thing that will relate more here is, can they prove your presence within a borough or a county? Can they prove your physical presence within it? And that's the same as if you get a parking ticket. Can they prove that your car was physically present within a borough? Or if they're coming after you for council tax, can they prove that your house is physically present within that alleged borough or county? It's the same with the HMRC when they're coming after you for income tax. Can they prove that you are physically present within the UK? See, and this is the thing, we go behind the facts of what these things really are. If you look at factually what the UK is a set of statutes. They're pieces of paper. Or in other words, a statute is the written will and opinion of the legislator. We've got case law where they openly admit that. And so that's what they're claiming you're physically present within. And people don't distinguish this. People don't distinguish the two. They think whenever someone says the UK, they're thinking about the ground that they're standing on called the British Isles. But even then, the British Isles is just a name given to a landmass, a certain geographical location. But like I say, a county or a borough or a state is not a physical geographic location. It is simply the creation of somebody's mind. If you don't believe me, well, go out and take a picture of a borough or a county if you think you can see one, because these things are just invisible borders of the mind that don't exist in reality. And so this is something we use against them. It's the same with the borough or a county. The borough or a county in this country, if you're within the alleged London boroughs, which is a certain round 25 square radius, if you like, of London, a centre of London, of an old ancient town called London, that's called the London Government Act 1963. Was enacted in 1965, and then we have the rest of the country comes under what's called the Local Government Act 1972, which was enacted in 1974. They're just bits of paper. That's all they factually are. So when somebody claims you're physically present within such a thing, ask them what it is. And here's the thing with the way we use this line of questioning against these people. Never ask a bureaucrat a question you don't already know the answer to. And so, if you don't know the answer to this question, it's still fine to ask it, but you've always got more on your side when you actually know the answers to these questions, because then you know what's coming, and you're always a step ahead of these people. Well, you're always more than one step ahead of these people, because you know what's coming. Because you know the answers to these questions, and you know generally how these people are going to react. They're very easy to predict in many cases. And so say this is one of the many methods we can use against them to actually show that their case is based on complete nonsense. Because if you get a parking ticket and a certain council, as they call it, which is nothing more than a building with a group of people in it, they claim that they can come after you because your car was illegally parked, legal opinion again, within a certain borough or county, when then asked for facts proving that. And they can never do it. And even within their own books that they're meant to run by. There's one book called the local, I believe it's called the Local Government Administration book, or CAB book, CAB book. It actually states that a council is a body politic, a body corporate. So it's admitting that it's fictional, it's not real. And that includes the borough itself. The borough or the county itself. They actually openly admit this. We've used this stuff against them. They just want to deny it outright. They just want to deny any of it's true, any of it's applicable, or any of it's valid. We're making a valid point, because it tears apart this illusion that they've got that any of this is actually real. Any of this as any real substance in the real world, sort of thing. So. Yep, I'm live. If Dan's listening, mate, yep, I'm live. And so, that I'll say this is one of the many methods we use against them. And the biggie that we use now, the one that we use most often, is what facts do you realize? Because if they're going to bring a certain act against you, if it's speeding or parking ticket, anything like that, usually comes under something called the Road Traffic Act or the Road or Traffic Management Act and all this sort of thing. But it doesn't matter. We simply just ask them, what facts do you rely on to prove that act is applicable to me? And they'll say, well, we've got the act. Well, I couldn't care less what you've got. Prove it applies to me first. If they start trying to read from it, say, I'm sorry, but before you read from that, prove it applies to me first. Then you can read from it to your heart's content. Because if the only thing you can do is have that act prove that it applies, the only thing you can prove, or if you claim the only way you can prove that act applies to me is to read from the act itself, well, then ask them factually what it is. They bring the statute down in front of you, ask them factually what that is sitting in front of you, because that will just be a piece of paper, won't it? And it will be what's known as a written instrument. And a written instrument is the will and opinion of the legislator. So all you got to ask is, what facts do you rely on to prove that the will and opinion of a group of people called legislators or the government or parliament, whatever they usually call it, is applicable to me? Because that's all this comes down to. It comes down to it's a group of people who decided that their will and opinion was going to be forced against you, basically at the barrel of a gun, and they claim that they can justify doing that and they have a right to do that. Well, then you ask for the facts proving that. That's all this comes down to. Somebody else's will and opinion being forced against you, against your will, and without your consent. Because this is another thing with the free man movement that comes along. They all claim this is done with consent. And, well, I'd like to see facts of that. And same with the police. Apparently we're policed by consent. And here's the thing about that term. They claim that legislation is a rule and regulation of society given the force of law with the consent of the governed. The consent of the governed. Well, think about that term. Governed means the control. The consent of the governed, the consent of the controlled. If you're already under their control, why would they require your consent? And here's another one. The consent of the governed. Now, some people say that the government's there to represent us, correct? The MPs and all that. Well, okay. Did say that they're the governed because they're meant to represent us, therefore they do what we tell them to do. So they're the governed then, aren't they? So if a rule and regulation has the force of law over us with the consent of the governed, it means the people that represent us, who we govern, therefore they are the governed. It's their consent that gives law the force over us. See, it doesn't matter which way you look at it. It makes completely no sense. And if anything, that actually makes consent. Actually, it makes a little more sense because the consent of it's their consent, not ours. I hope you can see what I'm getting at when I'm saying that. So this whole issue of the consent of the governed is all complete nonsense. And it's an oxymoron. It's not grammatically correct. How can you ask for consent of the controlled? If they're already under your control, you'd never require their consent. And they never do ask for it, do they? They put on these phony shows every few years, claiming them to be, elections, and we can vote for them apparently. But do you really believe you have any influence over these people? By sticking an X on a bit of paper and dropping it into a black box, and they claim all the voting is done fairly and everything else. Yeah, apart from them fiddling the figures on that, do you honestly believe even if it was done properly, it would make any difference to the people who allegedly control us? I mean, you see it all the time written in on the TV and in newspapers. They refer to these people as our rulers. They rule over us. Can they be your representatives? You cannot represent something and control it at the same time. It's one or the other. You either represent it. If you represent it, we control them. If they are government, they control us. How can they represent us then? It's that simple. It points out the bloody obvious, but most people get lost in this whole issue of consent and everything else, whereas the truth is you're not listening to the words properly. You're not thinking about it clearly enough. It's all contradiction, and this is how the legal system operates. It's all contradiction, period. Because they couldn't operate without it. They could not do their jobs without it. They would talk themselves straight out of a job if they couldn't get away with the nonsense that they do. Because every time they bring out a rule and regulation, in many ways it hampers their efforts to use their system against us. This is why they can't follow their own rules and regulations. And they ignore them on a whim when it suits them, and then use this whole thing called necessity. Well, necessity has no law, as they say. So if it's necessary for us to steal your money and screw you over, well, we need it. So whatever you think, we couldn't care less. We couldn't care less about any of these rules and regulations anyway, because it's necessary for us to do what we're doing, and that's the excuse they use, along with many others. But like I say, it's all flawed logic. It's all nonsense, but this is what we go about trying to expose. So, I'll tell you what, I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to have a quick cup of tea, and we'll stick a bit of music on for a little while, and I'll come back shortly. If anybody'd still like to call in, you can do so. And the number again on Skype, give me a second. Oh dear, I've just lost it. Damn it. Oh, there we go. It is 044 161 2980 298. So if you'd like to call in and talk, if you have any bureaucratic attacks dealing with yourself at the moment, you've got a court case coming up, anything like that, feel free to call in, and I'll help you as best I can. So we'll take a quick break now. Stick a bit of music on. I'll try and get my voice back. I'll have a quick cup of tea, and I'll be back in a few minutes.
Your time, heed this wise advice. Come ease the heat of breaking down the tension. Shut out confusion, frustration, lamentation. We don't need it no more. Oh yes, I am practicing to do all the good I can. It's kind of warm light, so peaceful inside. Jah will never hurry get excited. He just works his ways. Without a sound we can feel it. Oh yeah. Frustration, lamentation, out confusion, frustration, lamentation. We don't need no more. Oh yes, I am practicing to do all the good I can. It's kind of warm light, so peaceful inside. Jah will never hurry or get excited. He just works his ways. Without a sound, we can feel it. Oh yeah, frustration, lamentation. We don't need no more.
Today is the 17th of February, Sunday, and thanks for staying with us on the show. Still, sorry about that. I believe there was a bit of a technical glitch. I wasn't able to have any music put on just then, but thanks for staying with me still. So, can't remember quite what I was talking about before, but what I'll do is I'll go into a little bit about regarding the British government, if you like, and the alleged legitimacy of it. And I'll refer back to the American system as well. Now, what we do on the No State Project group here, we've looked at lots of libertarians and people that have come down through the centuries who have wrote on this subject. And one of the most influential people we've found regarding learning about this stuff is a chap called Lysander Spooner. And he was around in the 1800s, and he wrote several essays, and they're absolutely brilliant. There's a link on my website to a website for him showing a lot of his work. And one of the most influential we use regarding this stuff is an essay that he wrote called No Trees and the Constitution, No Authority. And what he refers to as regarding the American Constitution is that basically if it could be anything at all, it can only have ever have been a contract. And it could only ever have been a contract between the people then alive and the people who ever signed it, and people who are capable and of the right mind to be able to sign it and be held to that agreement, or be obliged by it in some sort of way. And so what he revealed is the obvious thing. Nobody ever signed it. There was only ever one signature put on the Constitution in America, and that was as a witness to. None of the founding fathers ever put their signatures to that document. So it makes you wonder why, doesn't it? And yet they knew why, because they realised what it was, and they didn't want to be held accountable to it. So they wouldn't sign it. They wrote it and then palmed it off onto people as, well, this has been ratified, or this has been, this is it, this is now our Constitution. But the truth of the matter is nobody ever signed it, and nobody held themselves accountable or liable to it. And it's pretty much the same with our Constitution as well. Our Constitution's allegedly, the Bill of Rights and all these such things got signed by kings or priests and things like that. But the truth of the matter is, where did anybody else in the country at that time, at that generation, ever sign it as well, or claim to be, or claim themselves to be bound to it? Nobody. It's one person signing over the lives of everyone else and thinking they can just use their signature to do it. And it's nonsense. And we're talking about a document, in this case, Magna Carta and things like that in this country, that's over 700 years old. I mean, knocking on for nearly 800 years old now. And how can something, a piece of paper that was signed over 700 years old, give today authority to another group of people generations later who claim that gives that document or that piece of history gives them the right and power over us, gives them authority over us? It's complete nonsense. Now, how can a piece of paper that was written 700 odd years ago apply to anybody today in this day and age? And we get a lot of these people who are constitutionists and, wrapped up in all the monarchy and, we've got to get back to the proper constitution of this country and all this sort of coswallop. We never had a valid constitution in this country. No country around the world but you got to remember there's no such thing as countries. They're just political fictions as well, or political bodies, if you like, but most square patches of land on this planet that certain groups of people calling themselves government claim to have a monopoly over, none of them have ever had a valid contract or constitution to give them authority over anybody else. I think our background noise has gone now. That's good. And so, like I say, the Lysander Spooner's no treason essay can be applied just as easily to our constitution or any other around the world. It just goes to prove that whatever they thought they were or are, they're not contracts. And even if they was, they could only be a contract between the people then alive at the time and the people who ever did sign it. And in most cases, one person only ever signed it. In the case of the American one, nobody signed it. The only signature was on it was as a witness to, and a witness to is not a signatory to a contract. They're simply there to witness other people signing it, which they never did. And then when you look at our alleged constitution and the alleged oath that the Queen took, the coronation oath, she signs it, but she's the only one who ever did. How does that make it a contract between, or does it even purport to be a contract between us? Between her and us? No, it doesn't, because what does she say in it? I promise to govern. I'll read a little bit out to you. She signed it at the top right, which people start making a big thing over, giving it, she didn't sign underneath it, so she's not claiming that she stands under it, she's above it, and does it bloody well matter? It's just a bit of ink on a bit of paper at the end of the day. But it's got it, I solemnly promise and swear to govern the people of the United Kingdom, which is a fiction, remember? Yeah, it's a statute. So they're trying to mix people with something real, obviously, something real and empirical animated with something that simply exists on a bit of paper, as which is nothing more than a recording out of somebody's head. The people of Great Britain, Northern Ireland, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the Union of South Africa, Pakistan, and Ceylon, and my possessions of that, and of my possessions. So I suppose she's claiming where her possessions, and other territories to any of them belonging or pertaining according to the respective laws and customs, blah, 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 and off it goes. And people make the big thing, but people miss that part, but go to this part and say, well, this is the most important part of that document. I will, to the utmost of my power, maintain the laws of God and the true profession of the gospel. Well, that doesn't mean jack to me. What matters to me is that she's claiming, I solemnly promise to swear to govern. That means to control. Okay? Now, like I say, how can that be a contract between anyone? Who would give somebody else the right to control them and claim, oh yes, she can do that, or I'd sign to that? No one would. It's bloody nonsense. But there you go. But this is the thing a lot of these constitutionists jump on. They try and make it into something that it's not. Look at what it really is. Look at what it really is. Look at what it factually is. It's a piece of paper with a woman claiming to allegedly controlling us, controlling the rest of us. That doesn't make her valid or give her any legitimacy, or puts us in a trust relationship, or puts her as some sort of someone we can go to put things right when it all goes wrong with the government and all that. It's codswallop. Look at what it bloody well says. So anyway, so I'll say, if people are going to believe that created a legitimate government or monarchy over us, if you like, then you got your head in the clouds. That does not give anybody any legitimacy over anybody. It's like me signing a bit of paper saying, yeah, I'll promise to govern every person living within a 500-mile radius of me. Just because I said so. Just because I put it down on a bit of paper. Now, it's a different story if I've got people with guns who go out and start forcing that will and opinion, which is what these people do. But you'd think I was a madman if I did that. Well, then why do you not put it this way: would you put up with your neighbour acting that way towards you, behaving in such a manner? No. Well, if that's the case, then why do you put up with it off a group of people who call themselves government or a monarchy? What's the bloody difference? Other than the fancy little titles they give themselves. So it's all about illusions at the end of the day. They put up this facade that they're something that they're not. And, that's it. It's just, you destroy the illusion, you destroy you destroy your enemy as such. You break down that illusion, you destroy that image of what they really are, and you start seeing them for what they really are. They're just people. And nothing more than that. And what gives anybody the right over somebody else, to have power over somebody else? Nothing. No one has the right to do it. It doesn't mean they can't do it. It certainly doesn't give them any right, regardless. And so, like I say, if you start looking into this at just a simple level like that, you realise this all falls apart. A lot of these arguments start to fall apart. This is where a lot of the free man stuff falls apart. The reason that government is illegitimate is this simple. It's compulsory that you support it. Now, people say, well, it's voluntary. Of course it is. Or, taxes are voluntary. Oh, really? Try not paying them and see what happens. You come under attack straight away. Or if you, the only way we actually support government, voting means absolutely jack. So I won't even get into that argument with most people, but the only way we actually, on a physical and what's the word for it? On a practical level, support government is, i.e., taxation. Which, as we know, the money that they take from us isn't real, and there's reasons behind that. Because obviously they give you something called money, and to make you believe that it's valuable, they keep spending all their time trying to take it out of your pocket. Because that's what gets people believing that it must be valuable, because you've never got any of it, and you keep having a fight to get more of it. So it must be valuable, mustn't it? And that's the game they're playing with, this stuff called money, these bits of paper that they call money. So anyway, like I say, so let's look at it from a practical sense and from a layman's sense. Support government is compulsory, i.e. through taxation. You are forced to pay them, like it or not, whether you want them or not. Now, how can someone then claim to represent you or even be respectful enough of you to support them? If government was legitimate, people would voluntarily support it. They would not need to force themselves on the people to force us to support them to make them allegedly legitimate. It doesn't matter. All the fancy bits of paper behind it doesn't matter about. All the fancy pomp and all the fancy history and pomp and ceremony that come before it. It proves fundamentally that they cannot be legitimate because we are forced to support them, and that cannot make something legitimate. It cannot make a valid contract, can it? We all know that. You cannot claim that a contract's valid when it's coerced. That's exactly what government is. Government is nothing more than organised violence and coercion. That's it. And this is what makes their system flawed, and makes the entire thing regarding government and the monarchy flawed in itself. Because you cannot have something valid when it operates and allegedly only exists by violence, by coercion and violence. That's it. It's that simple. This is why we can't agree with the Freeman stuff, where they claim, no, we want good government and all this. Well, there ain't such a thing as good government, because any and all governments that have ever existed around the world, it's compulsory that you support them. That flaws them, period. End of discussion. There's nothing more to argue about regarding that. So that's it. Like I say, and that's the most simplest thing we point out. And the other thing is the purpose of government. They claim that its purpose is allegedly to protect us. Well, I'll read this out to you. This is from Lysander Spooner. It's got our constitution. Our constitutions purport to be established by the people, and in theory, all the people consent to such government as the constitutions authorise, but this consent of the people exists only in theory. It has no existence in fact. Government is in reality established by the few, and these few assume the consent of the rest without any such consent actually being given. That's absolutely true. And if you read the rest of it, it's a fantastic essay. It will really open your eyes. And you'll see the world with a fresh set after reading that. I promise you. And he's wrote many other articles and essays as well. And so, like I say, it all comes down to this whole thing about the purpose of government. In spite of everything I've just showed you, they claim that the purpose of government is there to protect you. It's complete nonsense. The government that has no duty to protect you at all. I believe there's a case called the State. I think it was the State versus the Veto, where they basically state that the government has absolutely no constitutional duty to provide any services, even so elementary as law and order. Any services to the public. It means they owe us absolutely nothing, and yet they claim to tax us because they say, well, we have to be able to pay for these services that you people so badly want. And yet what they're saying in many of these cases is they don't have to provide a damn thing to us. Well, what the hell are you paying taxes for then? And the thing with this country, I mean, there's cases from America. You could Google this and find this stuff out very easily. In this country, they're a little bit more tricky, and a little bit they tend to hide a lot of these cases from the public. They're a little bit more difficult to find. But we have cases from this country as well where they basically state the Crown, the government, has no duty to protect anybody, i.e. citizens. See, and this is the whole thing. They claim that we are subjects, i.e. citizens of the Crown. And if you look up the word citizen, well, a citizen means somebody who bears an oath, but somebody who's a member of a body politic, which is fictional, who bears an oath of allegiance in return for a duty of protection. And these are reciprocal obligations, each equal consideration for the other. Now look up what they claim in their own case law when you try and sue them for when they don't fulfill that obligation they allegedly have to protect us, and you'll soon find out what they think of us. They owe us absolutely no duty whatsoever, as far as they're concerned, because they come up with this excuse: we can't protect an individual. That would be ridiculous. We have to protect the community at large, the public at large. We can't, Well, then, if that's the case, then you can't call us citizens, because a citizen is allegedly referred to as an individual by their own definitions. So a citizen isn't due protection. So if it's not due protection, you can't be a bloody citizen. It's as simple as that. And I'll read a bit of case law out to you regarding this, if people don't believe me. And people don't like this stuff. I even read this out to a copper once. He done his nut, because he didn't want to believe what I was saying was true, after I read about 5 cases to him. Or an ex-copper he was, anyway. Right, the police are here to protect the public, are they? Right. Okay, here's a case. This is Hill versus Chief Constable of West Yorkshire, 1988, and Smith versus Constable of Sussex, 2008. It's quite a recent case. And here's what they said: in performing the functions of investigating and preventing crime, the police owe no duty of care to any individual member of the public, i.e., citizen. In such circumstances, even where harm was reasonably foreseeable, there is insufficient proximity between the police and the victim. That's one case. Another case is Chief Constable of Hertfordshire versus Van Cole, Administrator of the Estate, GC, and another Smith versus Constable of West Sussex. Again, Lord Bingham of Cornhill and Lord Hope of Craighead, Lord Phillips, blah, blah, blah. All these lords, right, here's what they come out with. This is Article 2 of the Human Rights Act. They claim it doesn't affect this. Article 2 does not affect the principle established in Hill versus Chief Constable of West Yorkshire. Namely that in the absence of special circumstances, the police owed no common law duty of care to protect individuals against harm by criminals. Now you've got to remember, you get pulled for a speeding ticket and they claim, well, and you say to them, why the hell do you care whether I was speeding or not? And they say, we've got to protect the public. Read that out to them. See what their reaction is. Because what they're saying there is they have no duty to protect anybody, even from somebody committing a criminal act. Well, what are they accusing you of when you're caught speeding? Accusing you of a criminal act. Well, why the hell do they care? According to that, they don't give a toss. It's not their duty to protect anybody from someone committing a criminal act against another. See, goes to show you the contradiction. And the next one here is from, I'll read this one to you. Give me a sec. Lord Justice Peel, Lord Justice Sedley, and Lord Justice Rimmer, Red Dwarf, between Smith and Chief Constable Sussex Police. Right, it's got here. The Commission of the Peace creates public law duties which can be enforced by mandatory orders, but not by itself public law duties corresponding. No duty of care is owed by the police to the public at large, so as to render them liable to an individual who suffers harm at their neglect. Now they're saying they don't owe a duty to the public, because an individual might come after them and try and sue them for not doing their job properly. See, it doesn't matter what way these people try and twist it, whether they claim there's a duty to protect you or not, they will not let you hold them responsible. And I think the recent case of Michael Doherty with his private prosecution against the police goes to prove that. These people will fight you tooth and nail. They won't let you hold them responsible for anything, and yet their whims and opinions, they want to make us responsible for everything that these nutters come out with. And it says here, there is no relationship between the victim as a member of the public and the police capable of giving rise to a duty of care. What do you think that means? It means there's no agent-principal relationship. It means they don't answer to us, we don't answer to them. There's no relationship there. And yet we're forced to support them. How are the police supported? Through money stolen from the rest of us, i.e. taxation. But apparently there's no agent-principal relationship there. They're not our agents, they're not our principals, or vice versa, because that's what that means. It just goes to show you, despite what these people claim, they will not let you hold them responsible or accountable for their actions. And so there you go. And I'll read this out to you. This is from a chap called Frederick Bastiat. And he wrote an essay many years back, I believe in the 1600s, simply called The Law. There's a link to that on my website, and I believe. And you should have a read of that as well. I think it's on an audio book as well, same as Lysander Spooners, if you want to listen to it rather than read it. But it's got here, life, liberty and property do not exist because men have made laws. On the contrary, it was the fact that life, liberty and property existed beforehand that caused men to make laws in the first place. So I'm going to come to this because this is an issue about what gets thrown about a lot called rights. People like to believe they have rights, and this is where they get really upset. Nobody can prove they have rights. Now, what can be proven is that life, liberty, is that you have life, liberty, and property. I can prove you have those things. So, if anybody, ever came to me and wanted me to put a case forward for them, but I certainly can't prove you have rights. Rights are nothing more than an abstraction. Again, they only come from the mind. But your life, your freedom, your freedom of thought, even, it is real. It's something that can be demonstrated and proven, empirically and objectively. Rights can't be. It's a fact that people have a belief that they have rights, but it's not a fact that rights exist in themselves. And this gets people really upset. They don't like hearing this. But the thing is about rights is, regardless of whether you think that, regardless of how much you might want to argue about it, at the end of the day, it comes down to this. People start saying, well, you telling me well, that means no people can do what they like to me. No, it doesn't mean that. It means that if rights simply don't exist, it means nobody has the right to do anything to you. And it's not because you don't, and it simply means, it's like somebody saying to me regarding that, claiming, well, you're telling me I don't have a right to life. Well, no, you don't. You have life. And nobody has the right to take your life. Nobody has the right to do that. Nobody has the right to steal from you. And the reason is because you have them. And that should be respected. It's got nothing to do with rights. It's something that we should respect. Life is something that we regard as sacred. And, it should be respected. And that's something that's hardwired in their brains. That's morals, that's ethics, that's the difference between right and wrong, which most of us do know, except maybe certain psychopaths who have among us. And so we have to have that. We have to have that hardwired in our brain. Why? Because if we never had it, it would be self-destructive, which is exactly what we see with psychopaths. These people become self-destructive and start becoming destructive of everyone else around them. They start to do harm and damage to everyone else around them. That's the reason why we have to have morals and ethics. That's the reason it's hardwired in our brain. Otherwise, we can never survive as a social animal. It's that simple. And people can say, well, that's all just conjecture and legal opinion and all that, but I think it can be demonstrated, at least on an objective level, to be true. And so, when it comes to a right, legally speaking, in La La Land, under their opinion, it's nothing more than a legal claim. You can simply claim you have a right, but you certainly can't show any facts proving it exists. And it's the same when they claim you violated a legal right, or common law right, or whatever you want to call it. Doesn't matter what you want to label it. Where are the facts to prove any of it exists? You can't. That's the whole point. And so, this is what really gets people upset regarding rights. They don't like being told this. Because, it's the truth at the end of the day. It doesn't matter whether you want to keep on banging on about, you claim you've got rights, you can do this, that, and the other. Makes absolutely no difference at the end of the day. Where are the facts to prove it? And the thing is, when you can let this whole concept of rights go, it makes life so much easier to understand. It doesn't create a problem, it solves one in that sense. To understand that you don't have rights. I don't have an issue with the fact that I know I don't have rights. It doesn't upset me. Because I understand what it really means. I understand the concepts of what that really means. And this is the thing. Did rights exist prior to the creation of law? Well, no. We know we can prove at least empirically and objectively that people existed. People they existed. They had life. They had liberty. They had property before anyone ever thought up this whole thing about rights or law. We simply invented law as a way to try and defend ourselves. And that's all a right really is in one sense, if you're going to look at it in that way. A right is nothing more than somebody's ability to defend themselves. And that's it. And this is why we talk about this fact that, we're using the non-violence principle. Violence can only ever be justified in self-defense. You can defend yourself. And if somebody's attacking you, got nothing to do with whether they've got a right to do it or not if they're attacking you. And it's not nothing to do with whether you have a right to defend yourself. You can defend yourself. Can you justify it? Absolutely. Why? Because the person who's possibly attacking you, doing you harm, had no right to do so. So can you justify self-defense? Absolutely. But here's the thing with what's the word for it? With determining this. Say to somebody, when would it be justified to take a gun off of somebody who's threatening you with it, or when would it be when would it be justified to initiate violence to take a gun away from somebody who was threatening you with a gun? And the answer is, at no point are you justified to initiate violence, because the person who's threatening you with a gun is the one initiating the violence. That's the one who's in the wrong. You're perfectly justified to defend yourself and try and do something about it. In that case, it's the initiation of violence that's wrong. You cannot justify it. You can only ever justify violence in some form of self-defense. That's it. And that's the principles we go by regarding this stuff. So we've got about half hour left. And so there you go. It's a matter of there's no such thing as a right to violate a right, because they simply just don't exist. That means nobody has the right to do anything to anyone else. The only way people can interact is either through mutual agreement or, like I say, if it ever gets to a stage where violence is involved, you can only ever justify it in self-defense, and that's it. So, I'll read this out about Lysander Spooner as well. This is from his, what one was it from? I might have the essays came from. So what then is legislation? It is the assumption by one man or body of men of absolute irresponsible dominion over other men who they can subject to their power. It is an assumption by one man or body of men have a right to subject all other men to their will and service. By Sanders Spooner, and that was from an essay called Natural Law, Natural Justice. That's it. It lays it out, black and white, what it really is. Law is just an opinion that's backed by a gun. That's all law is. So when people start talking about law and start talking about common law and everything else, you're missing the point of what it factually really is. It doesn't matter about all this, a lot of this nonsense about what it entails and whether it's common law or not. It makes absolutely no difference. It's all an opinion. It all came from somebody else's head. Stop buying into the program. And at the end of the day, it comes down to this: the definition of a crime, a real wrong against somebody, it's nothing more than an involuntary human relationship. That's it. And so, like I say, there's some very simple principles we go by, and we don't, get mixed up with a lot of this stuff that the free man movement and trust law movement do, because they make something that's relatively simple to understand, really, and try and turn it into something so complicated and so ridiculously complicated you can never get your heads around it, and you're missing the point, you're missing the facts. All you're doing is you're getting yourself into a situation where you're arguing and you're not discussing. Because an argument is a exchange of ignorance. A discussion is an exchange of ideas, as the saying goes. And so that's it, really, in some sense. I mean, as the shows go on throughout the coming months and that, I'll be, going a little deeper into this if you like. I mean, I haven't got to go that much deeper into it now. I think I've laid out the basics in that sense. But if anybody would like to call into the show in the future, I'll say we can go over these issues and we can go over how you deal with these people in courts, the questions that we ask. I'll talk a little bit about that. Basically, what we do is when we go into court, if we're up against a judge or a PATAS, anything like that, parking ticket, parking adjudicator, as they call them, we still use the same thing. We challenge them on the grounds that because we know their system is flawed, and here's the whole thing with their system, or one of the many, many things that flaws it, they claim to be independent. Well, what is it they're actually independent of? When you put in front of a judge and it's the state or the crown that's the claimant against you, or your accuser, who does a judge work for? Who are they on the payroll of? The same party. They can't claim to be independent when they're taking a wage from the same person who's making a claim against you. Makes no, that's it. And it's the same thing when this claim, let's say it isn't. Let's say you're up against the bank and they're trying to repossess your house, as I'm saying. I've just recently gone through. Ask the judge what is the nature and basis of the relationship between them and the claimant. Now, you might think that's a bonkers question, but actually it's a lot of common sense involved in that, because why would a judge give a toss whether you owe the bank money or not? Why do you think? I mean, obviously there's a lot of corruption involved in a lot of this, and they're always on the bank side regardless, but look at it from a practical point of view. The other party has to pay the court a fee to have that case heard in that court. So they're paying for a given result, in a sense. So when you ask what the relationship is, and they claim there is none, well, obviously there's some, because they had to pay money to the court, which i.e. goes in that judge's pocket, in order for them to sit and hear the case, in order to force you to be there at their win, at the claimant's win, in front of that judge, to try and force you to pay them money. So how can they claim there's no relationship there? This is all to do with money. And so, like I say, this is what we do. This is how we challenge them. This is how we start to expose their little facade for what it really is, a little dog and pony show they call a trial or a hearing. And so that's one of the methods we use. And a lot of the time we simply just, because of the games these people play where they claim that we have allegedly have a right to a fair hearing, or we can get a fair hearing, as I say, simply state to them, am I entitled to a fair and meaningful hearing? And they'll have to go, well, yes, of course. And usually, in some cases, they refuse to even answer that in front of me. But it's usually, you ask if, you're entitled to that, and they'll have to say yes, because they've got to keep the facade up. And then you say, right, so could I get a fair hearing if there's a conflict of interest? Well, anyone using a bit of common sense would have to say, well, no, obviously not. So then simply just ask who do they represent or who do they work for. And like I say, and if it's the plaintiff, if the plaintiff is the state or the crown, who does that judge obviously work for? Now, when it comes to magistrates' courts, they can claim, well, we don't claim a wage, we only claim expenses. That's why we're independent, and all that. Well, it makes no difference because who do they swear an oath of allegiance to? It's the state still, i.e. the crown. So their interest can only lie with the crown still. And those expenses they get paid, how does that work? Because if they weren't fining people who came in and out of those courts, the victims that they make of people, I would never get that. I would never get that alleged expenses money paid to them in the first place. So it's within their interest to make sure they fine people. Otherwise, they don't get their expenses paid, do they? That makes sense, doesn't it? And like I say, who do they swear an oath of allegiance to? The same as the judges who are actually on the direct payroll. It's to the crown. So how can they claim to be independent of it? They're in no way, shape, or form independent of it. And it's the same with adjudicators with parking tickets. If you look up the details of how these organisations get created, PATAS or TPT, which are the two tribunal services that get used in this country over parking tickets, they are set up and run by an agency of the government. They are in turn paid for, and the adjudicator is appointed by an agency of the government, and that agency is actually the councils. The very same councils who are trying to milk you for money, who in turn are nothing more than an agency of the crown. Because, like I say, the plaintiff is still, the claimant is still the crown, even in the parking ticket. Even though they'll turn around and say, oh no, it's the council coming after you. Well, the council is an agency acting on behalf of the crown. And like I say, the councils they choose the adjudicators and actually pay them, actually pay their wages. So how is it they can claim to be independent when that's obviously the case going on? And if you look on the many websites regarding certain councils, they openly admit that this is how they're funded and this is how they were set up. And yet they seem to think they can fool us. They seem to think we're idiots that are going to believe the moment they claim that, they can then claim that they're independent. What is it they're independent from? How can you be independent from a party that's actually appointed you and paying your wages? It's ridiculous, but this is the nonsense they think they can make us believe. So, like I say, it's one of those many things that Mark has picked up on over the years and obviously exposed, because it's obvious, it's common sense. And it's about stop buying into this bullshit that these people try and make us believe all the time. So I think I'm coming near the end of my time now, and I've got a quarter of an hour. So that's it, basically, in terms of explaining this to you. The other thing is, obviously, once you're in court, if you are ever in a situation you're in court, there's very simple ways of exposing these people. If you get to cross-examine any of your accusers, be it over council tax, the HMRC, a speeding ticket, anything like that, ask these people who are accusing you under a given act. Excuse me. Ask these people under a given act, or under the given act they're accusing. Ask them if they are experts in the interpretation and application of that act. If they claim they are, well then ask for the facts proving it's applicable. Then show me what qualifications you have to back that up, that claim up. Now, if they say they're not an expert in the interpretation of that act, well then how can they claim they know it applies to you then? If they claim it does apply to you, well then show me the facts to back up that claim. And they never can. It puts them in a double bind. The damned if they do, the damned if they don't, whichever way they answer. Because they're predictable. This is the way these people are going to answer. So that's one. I mean, the other thing is, did you file a valid cause of action against me? If they claim yes, great, okay. Well, how many elements are there in a valid cause of action? And 9 times out of 10, they don't know. Well, it's 99% of the time they don't know. If they did, it would still screw them up. It's worse for them to know the answers to these questions than it is not to know them. Because, like I say, the damned if they do, the damned if they don't. And what we're doing is we're letting the facts overcome these fictions. And so, as time goes on throughout the shows, people want to call in. I can cover issues regarding council tax, the HMRC, parking tickets, speeding, just about anything, basically, so long as it's victimless. That's something we don't like to get involved in if there has been a real victim and if you have actually caused harm. We're not here to give people a get out of jail free card, and we can't offer that either way. But like I say, it's an issue of, if you're just being attacked because these people are just out to suck your blood and money, we'll do our best to help, and we'll show you ways of effectively dealing with these people. And like I say, it's not a silver bullet, and anyone who claims that, if you file certain paperwork at this given time, they're going to back off and leave you alone, they're usually lying to you. They're usually trying to pull some sort of scam on you. Don't believe it. And like I say, we don't offer remedies or solutions in the sense of, we can show you something that definitely works 100% of the time, because we found even with what we do, these people are so corrupt. They're so, this system is so bent and screwed up. It makes no difference even when you are in the right on many of these occasions. So what we seek to do is we seek to expose them and get them to embarrass themselves into either dropping the case or sacrificing one of the two, either sacrificing this pretense of legitimacy or the violence they're going to try and use against you. And usually we hope they're going to drop the violence, and that usually means having to drop the claim against you, because, like I say, they'll talk themselves right out of a job, these people, so long as you put the questions to them in the right way. And it takes a little bit of practice not to get knocked off track. Still learning myself, and it can prove difficult dealing with these people sometimes. But as the show goes on, I've got plenty of phone calls and recordings that I've done, same as Mark, over the years to various bureaucrats. We keep making them on a regular basis still. And I'll be playing them to you on the show, and you can listen to yourself and listen to just how these people react to these types of questions. Because some of the time it's absolutely hilarious, the things they'll admit or start backtracking on after a while. There's one particular call that I made a little while back to I believe it was to Pinus. And I had the chap actually openly admit to me that the councils fund and appoint the alleged adjudicators. And I said to him, so what you're saying is that, excuse me, tired. So I said to him, well, basically what you're claiming is that the councils are, or the adjudicators are on the payroll of the council. And he went, yep, you're absolutely right. So I said, so can you explain to me how they can be independent then? Well, that isn't quite what I said. And he was trying to backtrack and deny he ever said that. I said to him, I've got this recorded, mate. I know what you just said. I'll play it back to you if you need me to. I said, yeah, you've just openly admitted that the councils play a part in who sits against them as an adjudicator as such, and who and the fact that they pay them. I mean, fair enough, they claim, oh, well, it doesn't directly go to the adjudicators, it goes to another company and they pay them in turn. Well, it doesn't matter how many steps you try and take. The money that they get paid with is money that's stolen from everybody. Remind yourself of that. This money is still stolen because the councils tax everybody else, and obviously force people to pay these parking fines under threat of violence, like bailiffs knocking down your door or threatening to steal your car and things like that. It's all violence. It's no matter how little of it they may use. And like I say, and yet he wanted to backtrack and deny that he ever admitted that and ever said it. And this is the fun that you can have with these people when you start to actually question them the way we can do. You using this line of questioning that Mark's developed over the years. So I think that's almost me for now. It's 10-2. I'll pass it over to my host, chap who's hosting for me today, and we'll stick a few tunes on for you. And I believe Dom's on next. I'll have to check, but that's me for now. I'll thanks ever so much for listening. I'll see you next Sunday again, and I'll say it starts at 1:00, and we do a rerun of Mark's Saturday night show from the night before, and it's commercial free, so you can listen to it, in peace without the breaks upsetting the flow of the conversation. And that'll be on every Sunday from 1 p.m. Usually runs about 3 hours, that show, and then my show will come on live straight after that, and that's it. So I'm looking forward to, continuing this on Darkcity Radio. So thank you ever so much again. If you want to check out my website, it's nostateprojectuk.co.nr. We're soon going to get the .co.uk bit sorted out, hopefully, and we can get it updated. And check out Mark's website, markstevens.net. And also check out the Kent Freedom Movement as well. They're a terrific group, and they have regular speakers going there all the time, and they have a terrific website. So that's the Kent Freedom Movement, I think .co.ning.uk, something like that. So that's me for now, and I'll be seeing you all again next week. Thanks again for listening in, and that's me signing off.